Hey guys, welcome back to Don't Wait Until You're Brave Enough. My name's Andy Martin, and this is my YouTube channel in which a 65-year-old songwriter is attempting to be brave and get my music out into the internet and just see what happens. So, thanks for being part of this journey. I'm starting something a little bit new. Today, I just had the idea of doing kind of a deeper dive into songwriting and the songs themselves. And so I came up with an idea of a playlist called Between the Lines. And anyway, so it's just to explore not just the story behind the song, the origin of it and stuff, but also look into the writing process itself. And so this will be the first of them. I'm looking at myself in my monitor, and I love this shirt. If you're a Strange Planet fan, you might love this too. Their rage brings me joy. So, just as an aside, I'm kind of a fan of Linkin Park and a fan of Thrice and some other bands where, it's a little heavier music, and I don't know, sometimes that is very cathartic and helpful. So, their rage brings me joy. Yes, and I thank my daughters for introducing me to Strange Planet. Good times. All right, so today I want to talk a little bit more about the song Damaged Goods. It's my newest song. Again, I wrote this, about like a week ago. And just want to talk a little bit more about it. And I'm really enjoying this song. The more and more I play it, the more I'm believing it and wanting to do more with it. And so this song started out a couple years back. I was having a conversation with a coworker, a young lady, and we were just talking about marriage and children and everything. And I asked her, is that something you look forward to, getting married and having kids? And I remember her response was, "No, I'm just damaged goods." And at the time, that phrase really stuck with me. It seemed like a hard thing, to see oneself that way. And so I started thinking about her, and I don't know how she would have defined that exactly, but, I started like applying that idea to myself and others. And for me, I don't know what that phrase might mean. It's like, our pasts sometimes are so jacked up that it just feels like we're dragging these shadows with us. And I'm not speaking for her, I'm talking about myself. Maybe there's others out there that would relate to this. It's like you just can't get free of these shadows, and they seem to influence our present. And by doing so, they're like determining our future and stuff. And so I wanted this song to really speak against that idea. And so that's how it started. I mean, really, I'm writing to that person. I know what you're thinking, that you're past beyond repair. Well, girl, that's a lie straight out of hell. No matter what's been broken, everybody everywhere can bring it to the one who makes us well. And I thought it's really interesting. I am a Christian, I am a musician, but I don't really write Christian songs, whatever. But as a Christian, that influences everything I write. And this one, it's so interesting because honestly, this is probably the most Christian of any song I've written in referencing God and his power to work in our lives. Because the more I got into this song, the more I was just thinking of how necessary it is to know and believe that. Second verse, I've heard there is no heartache that heaven cannot heal. You once said those very words to me, and that is true, she did. The one who gave his life up to make that promise real is living proof that we can be set free. And I really liked how these lines kind of one built into the next. One of the things that kind of came to my mind was this idea of just not being worthy of God's attention, God's blessing, and that idea of like, okay, well, maybe I'll get some crumbs from the table, from under the table. But that idea that we would have a seat at the table, and not just in heaven someday, but today, that there's a seat at the table with our name there, and Jesus saying, this place is for you. This is for you. And I hope all this will make sense, because honestly, I didn't even really think a lot about what I was going to say. But that idea, like for me, there's a lot of things, man, I wish I could undo in my life. There's so many things I wish I could unsee or unsay or undo, and I can't. But what's really beautiful is that the chorus, free from all the darkness and the sorrow and the shame, free from all the memories and the bad dreams and the blame. He can take our broken pasts and work them for our good and hand us back the future and the hope he said he would. So girl, don't think you're ever damaged goods. And I love that. It's interesting. The chorus it references Jeremiah 29:11, where he says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for prosperity and not for disaster, to give you a future and hope. And before you jump on my case and tell me how that's only to the Old Testament exiles in Babylon, yeah, I get all that, and I understand that. But I also want to say, I think that there's a principle underneath there that applies to God's people all the time. And actually, I think God's intention toward everyone on this planet is for good and not for evil. And especially for those who are his kids in his kingdom. I think of Paul's thing in Romans 8:28. We know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. And I think it's those that come and surrender to him that then are able to see God take that brokenness and weave it into something amazing, something amazing. I'll just give you a for instance before I go on with the song, and that is that in going through something a couple years back that was like it was a heartbreak for me. It was very, very difficult, and yet out of that, God led me into counseling and just into a space of healing that I don't think would have come around except for what that heartache stirred up in me that was finally dislodged and able to come to the surface. It's been hard. Dealing with your past is super hard. And I have nothing but respect for those who are willing to get help in it. So grateful for therapists and psychiatrists and whomever, just, man, we need all the help we can get. So moving on with the song, it does get into it. It becomes autobiographical because my dad, he did actually say one time he felt he was one of the non-elect, if you will, destined for hell. And I'm like, come on, and I do. I hope he found the truth. I hope that the Lord revealed truth to him before he died. But my mom was, she had a hard upbringing, I think, and she was always looking for love and sometimes in the wrong places. And from what I understand, there was just a lot in her life that was a mess. Affairs, that's what my parents got divorced about. She later just was such an alcoholic and a drinker and stuff. And yet, she had to come to Jesus moment and she gave that up. And she struggled with her darkness. But I believe that when she died, man, she woke up to freedom, like for real. And I love that. I know that one day we're going to have that. I want as much of that as I could have right now. And I want that for you guys as well, those of you watching. And I know some of you guys are probably thinking, why is he getting all religious on us or preaching or whatever? It is what it is. If you are not into that, feel free to skip this and move to something different. But man, for those who need to hear this, be encouraged. Be encouraged because God can take your broken past and work it for your good. So it talks about that. And then I just wanted to reiterate in the chorus, or the bridge rather, sorry. Every one of us has been so lost, and we need to remember that. We need to remember how bad things can be. Maybe you've had a charmed life. I don't know, but my friends and I growing up, not so much. And people that I know, not so much. Things have just sucked. And we've been really lost. But the beautiful thing is every one of us can still be found. And I see that. And I want God to remind me of that when I see just the homeless people, so many of them in our town now. And to remember that they can be found. All of us, man, can be found. And that's my hope. My hope with this. I've kind of gone on. Haven't really talked about the songwriting process so much, other than it started with a person that I knew, that I felt, I cared for. And I wanted to see her believe truth, about her life and stuff. And, and then just applying that to myself, to my own family. And just... I'll tell you something. Sometimes when I write songs, I think of people, that this sounds like a so-and-so song. And to me, I could hear Jelly Roll doing this song. And I don't know. Who knows? Maybe someday he and I will do a duet. That would be an awesome thing. So, Bubba, if you're out there listening, you and me, bro, this would be really good. I really like a lot of his stuff, and I admire so much. I don't know where he's at with God, but it just feels like he's coming to a greater and greater realization of his need for something so much more than anything he's had up to this point, to break free. And that guy's been through it. So I respect him. Anyway, so all this to say that for me, this song, the prayer of this song, is that people would hear that our past does not have to dictate our present. It certainly doesn't have to dictate some future that we just can't get away from. That's not true. That is not true. And it's really hard for us to bring our brokenness to the light. Man, it is so hard. So here's something else I wanted to throw out. I know sometimes I talk about comments and people making comments and stuff like that, but if you want to go deeper and write me an email, I'll put the email address in there. I think it's not.brave.enough64@gmail.com. And that is not so much like a public thing like the comments, but man, I would welcome any interaction. If this brings up something in you that you want to talk about or go back and forth on, that would be great. If you need prayer about anything, for real, I would be privileged to do that. So that's Between the Lines, and that's Damaged Goods. And I don't know if I'll do quite so much, but this one I just felt really strongly about. And so thank you for those of you who have watched this, and I hope that it means something to you. All right, thanks so much.